Divided Trinity, Redeemer, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, today, as I was preparing for this sermon, I thought, poor God. And you might have seen me up here smiling at that whole story about Jonah. That whole book is full of humor and irony, but I mean, this is basically a 2-year-old throwing a fit. Has anybody ever had that happen? Remember the memes on online? Have you ever seen them? The 2-year-olds throwing a complete fit because their mom put their peanut butter and jelly sandwich on the plate upside down, right? Or she doesn't like something. She doesn't like this soup. She asked me to make her this soup. Yeah, this is God today. This is it's kind of hilarious, really. Jonah is angry. He's angry because Nineveh did not get smited. Now I sympathize a little bit with Jonah. There are some people that I'm pretty angry they didn't get smited, right? He goes off to watch it, and no show. What is the deal? And we can have a little sympathy for Jonah here. He has been sent to Nineveh to prophesy. This is Gentile territory. So he has to be in Gentile territory prophesying to Gentiles, and says no, and falls out of the boat and is swallowed by a sperm whale, and is then vomited up on the beach. So there are when you look into this, there are some really fun things about this story. You may have heard them before. You may have heard them from me because I loved looking into this and learning about it. The first thing is that Nineveh was a Gentile territory that worshipped a fish god that rose out of the sea. So here's Jonah getting thrown up by a fish on the sea. Like, I kind of would have liked to have been on the beach that day, because they would have thought this was their God coming, and warns them about their behavior and what they're doing and how they're living. And it sounds implausible, but the truth is there is historic record of people being swallowed by whales and surviving. A sperm whale can swallow a piece of something 8 feet in diameter. So a person is not too big for them. And in 1891, James Bartley was a sailor aboard a whaling ship, and it is recorded. He fell overboard and was swallowed by a sperm whale, and he was in that whale more than 48 hours after he was when they caught the whale, and when they split it open, there he was in it, still alive. It took him 2 weeks to get over that. Sir Francis Fox wrote about it as follows. Bartley affirms that he would probably have lived inside his house of flesh until he starved, for he lost his senses through fright and not from lack of air. He remembers the sensation of being thrown out of the boat into the sea. He was then encompassed by a great darkness, and he felt he was slipping along a smooth passage of some sort that seemed to move and carry him forward. The sensation lasted but a short time, and then he realized he had more room. He felt about him, and his hands came in contact with a yielding, slimy substance that seemed to shrink from his touch. It finally dawned on him that he had been swallowed by the whale. He could easily breathe, but the heat was terrible. It was not of a scorching, stifling nature, but it seemed to open the pores of his skin and draw out his vitality. His skin, where it was exposed to the action of the gastric juice, face, neck, and hands, were bleached to a deadly whiteness and took on the appearance of parchment and never recovered its natural appearance. Though otherwise, his health did not seem to be affected by his terrible experience. I bet his prayer life was much improved, but his health was not harmed. Can you imagine walking around like hair's all frizzy and you've got your piebald basically because of having been in this whale all your life? And I wonder, was he handsome before? What did he lose by going through that experience? So Jonah did the same thing. Interrupted his life, was swallowed, vomited up, finally agreed to go. And he thinks he and God have a deal. Right? Okay, I'll make the deal. I'll go prophesy and you will smite them. And God never said, if they change, I'll change my mind. So when God doesn't smite them, he's like, what is this? He looks like an idiot. He looks terrible forever. He walked through the town proclaiming this horrible fate that didn't happen. Things didn't turn out the way he thought they would. The same thing happened to the workers in the field. There's a root sin here. They worked a whole day and were paid the usual daily wage that they agreed to in the beginning. You notice the later workers, the owner of the field never said, and I'll pay you the daily wage, or I'll pay you the daily rate. Adjust it. He just said, go to the vineyard and work. Go to the vineyard and work. They made a deal. They think the landowner is being unfair, not because he didn't live up to the deal, but because it seems to them that the landowner has changed the rules of the game. If the person makes $100 for an hour's worth of work, 5 to 6 p.m., why should I make $100 for 8 hours? Doing the same thing. I've been cheated. You'll notice the irony here as Jesus talks, because the landowner did not contract with those workers for the time that they would be paid for. And God says, is it right to be angry? Is it right to be angry? Is it right for Jonah to be angry about Nineveh not getting smited? To show concern for the bush, but not Nineveh? Is it right for the workers to be angry that their colleagues and comrades got paid generously while they got a regular amount? Is it right? Of course not. Obviously, the answer is supposed to be no, it isn't right to be angry. And why it's not right is, there are couple of reasons. The first one is, Jonah and the workers feel they've been wronged, even though no actual harm has come to them. Well, Jonah's weird looking from now on. That could be harm. But he's also living in a place that kind of thinks he's a god. So there might be compensations for his weird look. They haven't suffered any wrong, and yet they're angry because they don't live in the gracious generosity of God. They don't live in the abundance of God's love and God's life. Instead, they're living in a scarcity perspective, in competition for limited resources, and that's not God. That, in fact, is the root of the sin. Remember, I said there's a sin going on here. Covetousness. Competition between each other. Covetousness. Wanting what you don't have, no matter how much you do have. And covetousness and joy and generosity cannot live together at the same time in the same heart. It kills us spiritually to live a life based on a scarcity perspective. It kills us. And so Jonah and the workers are going to have smaller and smaller and smaller spirits day by day as they practice covetousness day by day. We looked a little bit at that last week too. The grace and the mercy of God overflows naturally, and we stop ourselves from being a conduit of it if we practice covetousness, competition for limited resources. And that's what both of these have done. In both cases, they don't doubt the goodness of God. Oh, it's 10. I'm like, what? We didn't turn off the bell. They don't, see, this is a word apparently. God is chiming in. Neither one doubts the goodness of God. They say, all of them verbally say, you are good, but you didn't give me what I feel is my fair share. You are a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, and ready to relent from punishing. But I'm still going to sit here and hold my breath till I die, says Jonah. It's funny. To me, it's just funny how he acts. And the workers are misguided too because they're not depending on that generosity. What they didn't ask themselves is this: I wonder. And we do that every day. When we complain about someone or something that's happening or has gone on, our first response is not towards compassion a lot of the time. So, Judy saw me yesterday setting up tables, and I'm sure I was, and I would do this, do that. Anybody who came in front of me, do this, do that. My kids used to say, yes, Mrs. Mommy Ma'am, when I got in that mode. And yet, she was nice to me, compassionate to me. She's still speaking to me this morning. Thank you. Because the question occurs, I wonder what's on Mother ClayOla's plate today. Not she should be nicer, which is also true. And we do that to each other all the time. We don't ask ourselves, I wonder if they feel okay. I wonder if something's on their mind. I wonder if they forgot this task. We don't do that to each other, and Jonah and the workers didn't do that for each other either. That covetousness leads to a lack of compassion. We all have to grab what we want, so therefore we can't have compassion for someone else who also has needs. Do you know, we actually pray about that in every liturgy. Every single liturgy. Give us this day our daily bread is a prayer that everyone will get what they need equally. That no one will hoard someone else's or try to sell it to them or hold it hostage for some action they want, but rather that everyone will get what they need equally. There's one reason why there is a commandment, thou shalt not covet. Because we cannot live as people of God if we are covetous. Only live your life in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or am absent and hear about you, I will know that you are standing firm in one spirit, striving side by side with one mind for the faith of the gospel. Paul tells the church today. And that kind of life, standing side by side together, cannot happen where we want what each other has. Jonah and the workers are missing their relationship with God. It reminds me of the father and the story of the prodigal son, where the older brother goes into the barn and he's in a snit because dad is making a party for this son who returned, and he says, I have always been here doing what you wanted, and you never even gave me a calf or a goat so I could celebrate with my friends. And the father says, son, I have always been here, and all I have is yours. Jonah, I have always been here, and all I have is yours. Workers, I have always been here, and all I have is yours. St. Luke's, I have always been here, and all I have is yours. Amen.